Welcome. My name is Masha Markovic, and I'm coming from Sarajevo Film Festival. I'm very happy to welcome you on the session from Institute of Documentary Film. This is the sessions of industry session. They are working on many different topics concerning both documentary and fiction challenges that we are facing as a film industry. This session is co-organized by Ji.hlava International Documentary Film Festival, and today we are very happy to welcome emerging producers, alumni who have been very essential for the European landscape production and challenges that they are facing. This session today is about female voices in film production. We will be talking, the title is a bit, let's say, wide, but we will be tackling different aspects of gender equality and what does it mean in terms of the film production. Today with me, I'm very happy to welcome a very distinguished female producers coming from different parts of Europe and that have been very successful with their films. And I'm very looking forward to discuss with them and also to in future see their upcoming projects. Today with me are Dragana Jovic from Serbia, Natalia Libet from Ukraine, Melissa Lindgren from Sweden, and Charlotte Hailstone from Scotland. When Ji.hlava approached me to moderate this session, I was very excited, and there was one very specific thing. It is when I started to work in film industry 14 years ago. I was surrounded by very powerful women who were leading the process of changing the landscape of the European film markets. And there was something that I was, apart from their very powerful, very dedicated approach towards filmmaking and film markets. What struck me the most, that majority of these women didn't manage to have families. They were very powerful, but they had to prove themselves that they are as equal as other men in the film industry. And I feel myself as a second generation that thanks to these women, I have very luxury position that I don't have to prove myself that I'm as equal as my male counterparts. But what is on my generation, and I know that is also in Dragana's case, is that we are also allowed to have families, and we are now proving that being mothers in the film industry is also something that is acceptable, and that can be also that this will not make any bad influence or reputation for our professional careers. So this is something that was for me very essential when stepping into this world, is being secured, being nurtured by women who are really changing the path of European landscape. But on the other hand, this is like, I had feeling that they were feminists. They call themselves that they were not feminists. Then they have some of them saying they are, and the traditional values and so forth. So we were having these discussions if in any sense the feminism was relevant for our position of having these strong female voices in the film industry. So I'm very happy to open the floor, and I would like to start with some of you actually sharing their experience of stepping into the industry and what has changed from the days when you started and where are we today. Dragana, maybe you can start.
Me. Okay, when you mentioned being a feminist, and you also, while we were talking before the official talk, we talked about it, if we consider ourselves a feminist or not. I do consider myself a feminist, of course, and I'm also raising my son to be a feminist, because I think that is really essential and important. because, you know, I'm from Serbia and it's really patriarchal surrounding he's growing up. So for example, what we are talking about starts really early in kindergarten. I mean, it starts at home basically, and my partner and I, we are raising our son to be a feminist, but he's going to kindergarten in Belgrade. So he already learned all these, you know, differences between boys and girls. And he's explaining to me that I cannot do this because I'm a girl, and he can because he's a boy. So that strikes really early. And then, you know, when they grow up, it's quite, it's not late, but, you know, we have more, our job gets more difficult to erase what has been done already, even with, you know, my colleagues and friends who are very emancipated. It is really difficult to explain them why this equivalence between the number of male and female producers, film directors, script writers is important for us, because, you know, we have to start from some point, I think.
And what is the experience of the complete other part of the world from Melissa in Sweden? What is your experience with, Sweden is a leader in terms of the female voices in the film production. So do you have to be a feminist in Sweden to do the work?
Well, I'm not sure if we are actually the leaders, but we certainly have been very verbal about it, especially the last couple of 3 years. But for me, I mean, calling myself a feminist, it's always been a very natural thing. It doesn't feel like an action in that sense. What's more of an action is to not call yourself a feminist, I feel, because then you're actually trying to work against something that needs to happen, equality between the sexes. But yeah, for me, like, I'm actually coming from the festival world. That's my background, being a programmer and artistic director for a long time, and we have similar problems within the festival industry, as you all probably know. And having a feminist agenda or an agenda of creating equality within that world has certainly been like one of my main pillars in my work, and still is as a producer, of course.
And Charlotte, what is the situation in Scotland?
I think in documentary especially, it's always felt quite balanced to me. Maybe that's just my experience on the productions that I worked with. There were always a lot of women producers, women in the teams, and the Scottish Documentary Institute have this 50-50 Women Direct program, where they're really trying to, you know, by a certain year achieve 50% of directors that make documentaries in Scotland to be women, and they're actively pushing that. And I'm all for this sort of bringing the training and giving the options that women can catch up, I suppose. You know, as you're saying, Dragana, like these ways that we categorize ourselves and things that we think we can and can't do start very, very early on. And it's all well and good saying we need 50-50 on the crew, but if there's a lag, isn't there, in skills and how everybody's been developed. So I think Scotland's doing quite well and quite progressively to try and get that training in there so that everybody can actually be present with the skills that they need to make the whole landscape more equal. Yeah.
And in your career, I mean, starting your career, did you have to more identify with this position that you are a strong, independent woman, not necessarily feminist? I mean, this is something, because coming from the part of the world where Dragana and me are coming from, this had been also kind of a mission, so it had to be. So it was what Dragana said, it's starting from very early age, and it's all about the upbringing. So that's the reason why, I mean, and we are also speaking to a very broad audience, so I think the position in Scotland would be very interesting to hear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I started out, I was first in documentary TV in England, actually, sort of in the north of England. And you're young and you're just starting out, and everybody wasn't talking about rates, or they, you know, it was all like not a lot of transparency, no one really to guide you about where you could push and where you couldn't. And I found out after maybe sort of a year and a half working on a job that I was being paid less than the male counterpart who was doing the same role, and actually had been quite useless, and I was doing a lot of his job for him as well. And it was incredibly frustrating. And I thought, like, you know, why am I in this situation? Like, I know I'm capable, I know it, what is it? And I think part of the upbringing, if we go back to Dragana's point, is, you know, maybe fundamentally we've been told girls do thorough jobs and they people please and they're not ones for conflict. And I would say those are, you know, skills I got quite good at doing throughout my life. And I had to learn that, okay, wait a minute, if I don't stand up for myself, if I don't seek transparency and I don't stand up for myself to seek that equality, then it's probably not going to be handed to me on a plate. And I had that lesson early on. And I was always like, why is nobody talking about money? Why can't I know what he's being paid so I compare it? Otherwise I'm just guessing and I'm in the dark, and it's not a good situation. So I feel like, yeah, that's a lesson that I learned early on, and it's across the board. It's not only for women, right? It's anybody who's finding themselves at some sort of disadvantage, that power and information aren't necessarily open to them, and you have to work a little bit harder to find it, and then hopefully you go forward and share it to make it a little bit easier for those people coming up after you to find themselves in a better position. Yeah.
And Natalia, what is the case in Ukraine?
I think we're coming from the post-Soviet background, when during the Soviet times there was the equality between men and women was actually declared, and but there were, of course, there were hidden things and tricks and in the HR departments and in all kind of industries about that. And actually the society by itself is very patriarchal. But since the independence of Ukraine, we have more and more women in power. Like in general, like, I don't know, the latest, like we have several, or one actually, don't remember how many, women led the National Bank of Ukraine, for example. And also we had a female prime minister, things like that. We had two female heads of the Ukrainian State Film Agency, and actually currently Marina Kudarchuk is the head of Ukrainian State Agency, so she's a woman. And but still the decisions mostly made by men, and women have this strong supportive role in the industry and in the country. But no, in terms of directors and producers, I think we have around 40 to 60% ratio, so 40% of men and 60% of women. And yeah, it's getting, but I think it's not about gender. It's for me, it's about the voices, about the charisma of people. So I think that female charisma and how we move the film industry forward is pretty much successful and effective. So yeah, but also because of the war in the country right now, and so we're losing men, actually, lots of filmmakers and including actors on the field at the front right now, and we already declared some losses in the industry. It's happening, yeah. So, but I hope the war will end soon, and we'll have our country with our borders restored and prosper back and prosper as an independent country.
We also hope that this will be the case. And Dragan and me, again, coming from this part of the world, we know what that meant, having people on the front, and what meant for the film industry. So in our cases, that meant that, as you said, male were on the front, and there was also there was after the wars, there was more open space for women. So our industry had in certain moments was actually a lot of women stepped up because there were no men to do it, in a sense. So these kind of moments can also be turning point for the industry. So from the unfortunate events, but anyhow, I mean, it happened in the sense that we can show that we are as equal and capable, and on all fronts in the female in the filmmaking industry. What we were also discussing, what for me was, I mean, it's quite essential, is how do you regard the quotas that are being now imposed in many film institutes, or the tendencies to have to reach certain quotas. Charlotte, you were mentioning that the quotas are aim of the Scottish Film Institute. What are the results, and do you feel that there is certain jeopardy when the quotas are introduced?
Yeah, I mean, we have the BFI diversity standards, which you need to meet in order to get the tax credit. And I think Screen Scotland has just adopted those as well, sort of on a pilot scheme to see how it goes. And one aspect of that would be increasing the number of women on your team. It's not a hard quota for them. It's more, it's to do with all the protected characteristics of people. So with disabilities, or what their race is, any way that you can't discriminate in the workplace against somebody, they look to you making positive changes to engage those kind of people in your productions. I think on documentary, sometimes when stuff is happening quickly, and you need to know that you can trust the person that you're with, and maybe you've only worked with a few people, maybe people are busy, and you go like, okay, the only sound person who is available is this guy. It can be difficult when you're in heat of the moment and you're choosing between, making the shoot and not making the shoot, and who's available. And the Scottish industry is really busy at the moment. And I found myself sort of up against that, where I would love to choose a woman to do something, and it can be who is available in the last moment. But I think being encouraged to confront it and to think about it and to see where you can make changes is definitely positive. It's the same with this green shooting. It's very easy to put some of these things as a lower priority when you're up against your budget and your deadline. But the cumulative reminders that we do need to do our bit to make a difference and to encourage women to come up are very valuable. And the Scottish Documentary Institute one, I think they've seen results already between when they were first talking about starting the program and then running it for, I'm not sure exactly how long it's been running, but already the percentage has increased fairly significantly. So I think they're on target to reach their goal. I don't know how it feels if you're a young man starting out in documentary filmmaking and there's a directory that's only available to women. So we have this great resource that's everyone can list themselves there if they're women or non-binary filmmaker. And I can go, okay, I need a sound person. I look on there, but they're all women. And it's great to have a resource to be able to find them. But also, it brings up this debate. If you're new in an industry that's difficult to get into for everybody, a working class man might find it as difficult as a a middle-class woman, it's hard to draw some of these lines. So it's a positive thing, but there's always a flip side.
Well, I've heard recently that the worst, it is the worst to be a white 40-year-old Swedish man in the film industry doing your second film. So Melissa, is this really true?
Well, I don't think so. But I do like, I think that we have similar guidelines and quotas as Charlotte has in Scotland. And from what we can see, I mean, we've been fighting for change for a very long time. And if nothing happens, maybe these kind of guidelines is the push that the industry needs to actually make that change. So, and there's always going to be people that have had privilege for a longer time that needs to maybe step away a little bit from that privilege. And I mean, that's to follow up what Charlotte said about class issues, for example, or people coming from another country, immigrating to Sweden, trying to get into the film industry. That's also a type of equality that we really need to pay attention to. So for me, when I'm working, I feel like that gender equality is not maybe the biggest issue in Sweden right now. That's more to create a more inclusive film industry for everybody.
This means that in Sweden, this is the problem with the societies that are not so open. I mean, haven't been so open in terms of the film industry for the women. Let's hope that we will reach this point, and that women position should not be questioned. It's there, and that eventually we have to deal with other problems that are also part of the industry and who we have excluded due to the power, due to the privileges, due to the general conceptions and conceptions of the society. So I really hope that we will get there. But Dragana, there's one thing that for me it's quite essential when we speak about quotas is it is who is actually who is imposing the quotas and who is making the selections in all throughout the value chain, from the festivals or from the markets who will present the projects to the festivals who will show them, and prior to that the fund bodies who is sitting and somebody's actually handing out the money for production or the development. So what has been your experience and what's experience in Serbia?
When we are talking about the fund, the Film Center Serbia, for example, according to the law, we have to have 5 members of the committee who are deciding on the projects. And I was in committees a few times, and I was the only female representative out of 5 representatives. So you can imagine, and I was declared as president of the commission because I'm a lady. And I thought that, I was like, no, I mean, I can be the president, but I'm not a lady. I mean, we are colleagues all here and we need to discuss the projects and we don't talk in that direction, you know. And I tried to talk with the people from Film Center Serbia about the quotas, about how many women are in commissions and why, and do they take care of that. But apparently for them is really complicated to make the commission, because they need 5 members for each call, and there are a lot of calls that are different, and those are people from the industry who are competing. So it's and also, of course, there is a political situation involved, that if you are how to say eligible or not to be in the commission, I mean, you have to pass certain bodies in order to be established as a commission member. So it's very complicated for them. So if you ask them about women, they're like, oh no, I mean, you know, we have so many problems that this is also another problem that we need to deal with. But I mean, they need to, you know, that's important, who is sitting in the commission and who is making all these decisions. And if we are paying attention to what kind of stories we are giving the funds and who is writing them, who is directing them, who is producing them. I mean, all of that is really important. I mean, it should be, but when we're talking about experiences, I just want to shortly mention one of my experiences from the fiction film world, because I produced only one feature fiction film. And when we had meetings with potential collaborators, I was on a meeting together with two colleagues of mine, one lead producer, the same as me, and the other one line producer, and everybody was talking only with them. Nobody even addressed me. So, but you know, and I had to fight in my own film, in my own project, to prove that I'm capable enough to lead this project. So, but I don't know if it's all, and after, you know, when we started collaborating, they understood that, like, who am I and what is my position, blah, blah, blah. But first impression is always like, okay, she's a girl, I don't talk with her.
And Natalia, did you have this kind of experience when you were starting out as a producer?
No, I came into production from the corporate world, and I used to be a finance director, so I was responsible for the finances. So I usually made sure that everyone was paid on the same positions equally, and it was all reconciled with the HR departments. So when I came to the industry, where I was like, felt like, oh, I was finally like free, you know, freelance, a free person, you know, I could decide what to do and not reporting to any superiors, just to my colleagues, like horizontally, and to people I work with. No, of course, to the funds too, but it's a completely different story. So I was overwhelmed with that feeling of freedom, and also feeling that I could do, you know, anything. It's just so powerful thing. And I didn't really consider gender as a topic, but then I noticed that it's still, especially in the old production companies, all like built like at the very beginning of like in the 90s, it was still like a topic in terms of leadership, even though like women would do the most of the work, the leadership was still with the men. So it was interesting just to observe and to see how it's all like changing, like literally women were going and establishing their own companies, you know, and competing them with their colleagues and or ex-colleagues, and still being diplomatic, energetic, powerful, and supportive actually to their ex-colleagues and everything. So I think I don't know, like I think it's important that we know, or we understand, or realize, whatever the verb is, our strengths and weaknesses, and we can balance them and to work with them and to move forward to achieve our goals, and with the same kind of strength that we can have in our professional and personal relationships. So I think it's yeah.
There are two things, I mean, very similar things that Natalia and Charlotte mentioned, is the the being equally paid in this industry. And this is, I think, I mean, that in general, we need to be more transparent about the salaries and the commissions and fees that we do. But Melissa, do you experience this in Sweden, or do you openly discuss the fees? Is there a difference between having a female or male person on the set or in the set or behind the camera?
Well, I think we really lack the transparency as well, as Charlotte described, and talking about money is quite sensitive in many ways in Sweden. So I think there's a boundary there as well to like discuss your salary and ask around on set. Right now, I think we are experiencing like such a boom, especially due to like all the series that's being produced. So being a more like technical person within the film industry, there's no problem getting a job, whether you're a man or a woman. But I think what's also interesting to address in this sense when we're talking about money is, sure, I think when it comes to how many films that are being produced in Sweden between men and women, it's reaching almost equal. But when it comes to the films with bigger budgets, that's an whole other story. And that's also something that we really need to address, I think.
I mean, there was some statistics that on European level, though there is a rise on number of directors, female directors, across all of the, even in animation, but still there's enormous gap of the high budget films and where are female directors. There's just very few of them on European level. So this is something that, I mean, I think we get back again to who is giving the money and the funds in the first place for support of the projects. So Charlotte, did you have this kind of experience in Scotland?
Well, it made me think of some of the research that we sent over to you before. I think it was like a 2016 Southampton one, and it had this great image of 50-50 interest in coming into the industry between men and women, and the way it funnels down as you get into your first tier job, your second, the low budget feature, the second feature, the high budget feature, and by the end, such a tiny proportion of women that make it through the funnel. And I was sort of trying to think what the combination of effects are that lead it to get there. You know, what's the unconscious bias from the people who are gatekeepers and who hold the money, and this feeds into it. But also for myself, I was wondering what I did along the way where I might have self-selected myself out of opportunities as well, because it's to sort of bring it back to Dragana and the family conversation. I remember being in that first job at 23, not knowing if I wanted to have children at the time, and thinking, wow, but if I do, if in 10 years I want children, I can't see that I can do that job or that job or that job. I know what the hours are going to be. I know how constrictive this is going to be. And someone had a word with me at some point, and it was like, why the hell are you making these decisions for yourself now? You know, push yourself, and when you come to it, you can make the decision. But I don't know, anyone who likes to forward plan or worry about what the future might hold will take that into account even when they're very young. So I wonder, like, of course, with this family issue, people share childcare a lot more equally than they used to, and productions are making some changes to allow you to have families. But if the crux of it is, if you're working in camera and you're going to be doing a regular 12-hour day, pushing it a 14-hour day, sometimes, you know, you're on a hell of a job and they're doing you 18-hour days, and there's no way to pick up your child, or there's no way to actually make it compatible with family life. I think it's something that is maybe in the background of women's minds more than men, and maybe there's some form of self-selection in this as well, where we kind of tether things. I don't know. I wondered what everybody else felt about that, if they'd ever had a moment where they had that conversation with themselves.
Maybe somebody can share their experience. Okay. No. Okay. But this is really something that this also, I think it's very question of the technical crews, how they can actually work and how the gender equality applies on them, and what does it mean when we are doing the films, if we are really now seeking to have more, as you mentioned, having the sound people. Now there's a lot more women than it used to be, but first of all, do we need to do this? And second of all, if the technicians, I mean, people are more in technical crews, are equally approached, I mean, if their hours, if their work is equally regarded. So what is your experience from the films that you have been doing? Melissa, maybe you can share your experience with your recent film you had.
My productions are usually very, very small, working with solely documentaries. So with the crew during the shoots are often only DOP and the director and the sound person, or even often the directors films themselves. So in that point of view, it's never been a problem for me to find both qualified women and men. And for the DOP position, we have so many great cinematographers in Sweden who are women. That's such a pleasure to work with, and they are all in extremely high demand. So it's that certainly improved a lot during the last 5 years, I would say. But then when it comes to post-production, I think it's another story, because that's still very, very male dominated. And if you want to make an effort towards equality in that department, you really need to do your research, maybe take a chance on a more junior sound engineer, for example. Yeah, it's more challenging in that department. So I think post in Sweden is where we could definitely do a lot of work, and we have a long way to go there.
Dragana, what is your experience, especially when you were doing the fiction? There's also, I mean, as I recall, there was not so many, I mean, females, I mean, that on and out of the screen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in documentaries, I agree with Melissa. You know, these documentaries that I'm also making are really small, let's say, and very intimate. So it's really like basic crew, let's say, and I would say it's equal or more composed of women, for example. Even with male directors, it's like that. For example, for The Load, like every artistic position was author's position was woman. DOP, producers, all the producers and co-producers, costumes, set design, like even color grading person was female. So like everybody was, I mean, that's interesting. Even though the film is like there are almost no female roles in the film, that's true. And I mean, also the technical crew was male, obviously. And it's interesting, for example, with Ognjen's new project, we have also almost similar situation. I mean, very few women, I mean, but they're very, let's say, very influential and very important for the development of male characters. Let's call it like that. But yeah, it's the same situation. But yeah, what you asked, yes, almost no female roles, but a lot of female behind the camera.
And in terms of the people being hired behind the camera, especially? Do you think there is discrepancy in terms of if somebody is a female or male, in terms of the salaries, in terms of the hours, the respect among the colleagues?
Well, in terms of, from this specific example, I can say in terms of salaries, no. I mean, that was like the salaries are depending on the specific position the people are working on. And when it comes to respect, that's questionable. It's always questionable, you know, because I think that in each job each job you're doing, you have to work more in order to prove yourself that you are equal as your male colleagues. And that is really, frustrating. And with years, you know, when you are changing jobs and changing, I don't know, positions or whatever, it's each time you're at the beginning, because you have to work more and in order to prove them that you are equal with them.
And Natalia, what is the situation in Ukraine? What was your experience while doing the films?
I made only one documentary film, and the team was mostly women. Actually, young filmmaker, young cinematographer, like this new generation millennials, I would say, like all like from 22, 21 to 25, 26 years old. And we had only a composer, man composer, and my partner producer, a man, and and an editor consultant, and the rest, and also the characters, female nuns in the congregate in the western Ukraine, of course, all women. It's just very interesting to work in such a team, and I didn't notice actually at the beginning how it was like 80% to 20, probably even 90 to 10, something like that. It's like, oh my God, it's just so like nicely, like smoothly going, you know, like because you speak in the same kind of language, and there was no fight for power, you know. Who is leading, who is winning, who is better, who is smarter. There was no competition like that, because we all were going one direction to make a film, and everyone listened to everyone. It was just very interesting, actually. And also I enjoyed working with the younger generation. Completely new experience for me. And so, in terms of values and how they see the world, it's I think it's a lot to learn from. Yeah.
Charlotte, you have been working with for example, with Viktor Kosakovsky, how that reflects on having such a big persona, and how the team works, and how did you manage there to do more in terms of the team to be, let's say, balanced, and how is there enough respect among the crew if they are doing the females are involved in more in technical side?
Yeah, I think with Victor's projects in particular, it's about making this tight-knit team who completely trust each other. And then once you're in that situation, you can be sort of carried from project to project. And yeah, we have a mix in the team, and I don't feel egos come into it at all. This is what was really nice about documentary, and I think one of the reasons that I ultimately went with documentary is that egos felt like a lot more of a thing that I experienced in the fiction world, in drama, or in high-end TV, whereas here we're all together in this one sort of supportive unit. Yeah, and we're a mixture of men and women, so that's great. I wonder, so Natalia comes from being a CFO. Melissa does festivals and programming. Dragana, what was your background? Because I wasn't sure then if I'm the only one that sort of came up through, you know, like runner, PA, production route, and if that kind of affects how we feel about it. as well. You know, experience being a junior woman on a crew, which is something of itself.
My background is in working in culture, let's say. So I started like with theater performances and stuff like that, and then I later on stepped into film. So I was never like working in film as junior and then, you know, growing up. Not.
Yeah, and I think that probably does color how I feel about equality of men and women on the set and what the atmosphere is like. You know, I've been part of conversations or overheard things or seen what the dynamic is that can be really problematic, you know, for a young female runner or PA. And this was all pre Metoo, and, you know, discretion's the name of the game, and you don't say anything about the people who are more senior than you. And again, back to the transparency thing, everything was very hidden. And it's a strange environment to have as your work environment, that there are these pressures between the dynamic of men and women and senior men and junior women. And yeah, I was just interested to know if anyone else had kind of gone through that, because it can be off-putting at times if that's the career path that you've gone, and there's maybe a bit more what, you know, a young camera assistant might find in a very, very male-dominated, banterous, you know, environment where everybody was used to talking to each other in one way, and suddenly it was like on a construction site, suddenly you drop a woman into it, and, you know, you may be accused of taking away their fun, or now they can't talk the way that they wanted to. And, you know, it's and the respect thing, it makes it difficult to have a relaxed working environment sometimes. And I hope that it's improving now. I think it's probably better for people who are coming up 10 years after me, but it's it's definitely a different experience going through it step by step and seeing what it is like for the people that are now runners for you.
There was also one question that I really want to hear your opinion about is how are you handling now these changes imposed by media or Eurimaj, that basically in each of the funding for the projects you actually need to have a very developed strategy on the gender equality. Even for fiction films for the Eurimaj, you had to in the last call you had to present your film in terms of the Bechdel test. So what's your opinion, and how can we actually can we make a film that has only male protagonists if we are having these kind of tests included in the application itself? Dragana, because you are now working on a fiction film, can you tell me about that?
I mean, there will be female dialogues for sure. Not talking about certain topics, so that's okay. I mean, but as I told you, I mean, even when I'm working with male directors on their, let's say, films that are mostly with male characters, there is always really a lot of women that are involved in the film process on the creative side. So I think that who's making, I mean, it's not only what are the representatives of the film, let's say actors, but also the people, the women who are working behind the camera that counts, let's say. So on that side, I mean, I'm safe, let's say, but I would also like, I mean, for me to work with more female directors. For the moment, I'm working with Marta for years. And I recently just started developing a new project of Milica Tomovic, and I'm very happy about it. But it's also not let's say, it's not only in mine slate of projects, but it's like in Serbia, it's there are not enough female voices, not enough female stories. I mean, you know that Mirjana Karanovic, for example, she needed to write a story that she wanted to be told, and she wrote it, and she directed it, and she acted it. So, I mean, that's really, really powerful move, let's say. And I don't know how we are going to deal with all these imposed quotas, really, because when they are imposed, it's really, I don't know how that will reflect the art.
Melissa, did you have this experience? I mean, now writing new applications, and how do you do with this official part of financing your project that has to have these elements now?
You know, I don't really see it as a problem, because I think that if you have had this in the back of your head for a long time, you can write these texts very fast. It's not a problem, and we've done it many times before. Like having an equality plan for your project, it's very, yeah, it's simple. So maybe it fills a purpose for the people that never thought about this, that they need to think about it and put down some words on a paper on how to work towards that. And then the question about the bachelor test, I mean, is it the best test to measure equality on screen? Probably not. It has filled maybe a purpose because it's been so efficiently marketed. And I guess it's like a little bit fun, and that's why it's so efficient. Probably we can come up with better tools, but for now, I guess we're stuck with this one for a bit longer.
What's your experience, Charlotte?
Well, as we don't get to apply for media anymore, thanks for rubbing it in my face.
But still, Euromage.
Yeah, I haven't had to do a Euromage application since starting producing, so I can't speak to that one in particular. I mean, when you wrote the note to us before about the Bechdel test being on there, I was like, oh, is this like a yay or nay? Like, if it doesn't pass, you don't get the funding, which I thought was interesting, because if you then discount anything where there are no female characters, it does sort of chop an arm off a possible creative route or a story that could be incredibly valid to be told itself. But, you know, again, sort of what Melissa says, I don't think we should shy away from asking ourselves these questions, and, you know, just to open your eyes to the fact that that is something that a lot of films did not manage to do for a very long time is important, and it shouldn't necessarily be like that. Again, maybe there's a quota within the quota, and we don't need 100% of the films to pass the Bechdel test, but it'd be nice if 90% did, and then there's some room for variety as well.
Yeah, basically, I think The Great Freedom would not pass the test. The film that was amazing, and it's about toxic masculinity at such a great level. So, I mean, I think we should still be seeing the films. It's about the stories, and not about, I mean, and the perspectives. It doesn't necessarily have to be only about if we are represented in the films. I mean,
yeah, and I think Dragana's point about if you, and it's maybe how the BFI diversity standard works, that you don't necessarily have to check all these boxes, but if you're very female heavy in the representation behind the screen and in the people who are making the decisions and writing the stories as well, this certainly counts for something. It doesn't necessarily need to be every single aspect that's ticked off to pass, but it's definitely positive to be encouraged, I think.
We have received one question from the audience, actually, and this is how the Metoo movement was received in your countries. So maybe Natalia, can you tell us a bit how it went in Ukraine?
You mean Metoo movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear correct?
Yep.
I don't remember. I can't recall any scandals, Metoo scandals in Ukraine so far. I don't know why. Maybe it's just I don't know. I assume there are things or situations like that exist, but they haven't gone public yet, I think. It's just probably we we have other issues to solve all the time. There's something happening. It's, every time something is happening on the geopolitics or economics or something else, and we're all like collectively getting together to solve these issues, and then the breaks or pauses between the crises are so like small that we would like just to make films and not to make scandals. I think that's the only thing that we have, but probably later in several years we'll hear something like that. Yeah, maybe I just don't recall. I don't know. Maybe it's just too positive into the world right now.
That's good. That's good. That's a good sign. Dragana, so in Serbia, how did it go? I mean, we had this whole other level of scandal, not related to the Metoo, but maybe you can also tell us a bit more about Nisam Tražila.
Yeah, well, what happened like at the beginning of the previous year, one really young actress, she came out with her experience, let's say, with the man who was leading a very influential and important actors school, let's say, for kids, and apparently it came out that he was actually abusing very young girls, like from 14 years old or something to 16, who were like his daughters, let's say, because they were attending his school for years before that. And a group of the first voice was one young actress, and then a few others joined her, and few younger who are not still, let's say, famous and popular. So that was a really huge scandal in Serbia, and we talked a lot about it. And I was really shocked when I heard about it. And when I was speaking with friends from the industry, everybody told me that was like almost a known fact. So like everybody knew or assumed that this guy is not really, like that may happen or whatever. But what I think, actually, even though now he is released to defend himself from home, which I consider to be like awful and terrible. But what happened basically is that those girls were really supported by the public audience, so they got really huge support, and that really moved us from the women started speaking, after that, about different experiences, and even the group that Masha mentioned, Nisam Tražila, was formed by Bosnian girls. Yeah, Masha was.
They are the students of basically this had a spillover effect on students of film academies all across the former Yugoslavia. So it became up quite a big movement.
Yeah, but there are also still scandals, not from the, let's say, we don't know about the big producers and big directors and what is happening. That we don't know. We know about this huge scandal, what was happening in this acting school. We have found out about also some professors at the University of Drama Arts, but who, everybody knows about it, and they're like that and blah blah. So nothing basically can change now. But what changed, I think, and what is really crucial is that the women started speaking about it, and they understand that they're not alone in what is happening to them, that really is happening to everybody everywhere. Even now we have this let's say scandal about the hospitals and about women who are giving birth and what is happening to them, basically about all this abusive behavior from the doctors. So it's really it moved, but that, I think, Milena Radulović moved Serbia from one stuck point.
Yeah, and what was very important was not only that people in the film industry started to talk about this. Many actresses had shared their experiences really across the region, but it really moved, opened the public space to speak about the sexual harassment on the workplace, on the institutional level. This has been really put under the carpet for so many years in whole former Yugoslavia. So really, this was, and I think the fact that was been connected with the relatively famous person, it really had this kind of big wave that it happened, and I think we are still seeing the results of it, and it kind of made women feel more empowered, especially when they saw the numbers, how often it was, and how often it was silenced. So this is something that I don't recall any kind of movement and solidarity level, and the coming out of people actually sharing their experiences about something so personal. So I mean, this was essential. I mean, from the give the idea about the answer of the Metoo in our part of the world, it happened with, I mean, it has been delayed with an actual case, the notion, and had very broad social effect. Melissa, did you have any kind of what is the position? I mean, what happened in Sweden with the Me Too? Did you have any kind of scandals or?
We have the famous one about the Nobel Prize Committee that you probably all know. But I think for the film industry, it was similar to what you're describing, that it was the actresses' point of view who were the most loud, and also who probably had the worst experience within the industry. And I think it really had, it was met with great support, and I think it also had some good effects on how we changed our work a bit. One example is that intimacy coaching, it's now much more common on set, and to like structure the team around intimate scenes or sex scenes, it's a lot different than what it used to be. So those kind of situations, I think, have become better in many cases, at least on set.
And Charlotte, what happened in Scotland and UK?
I feel like somehow, because we're English language, I'm mentally piggybacking on the US, and I kind of absorbed all of the news at once. I think it comes back to transparency. I think there were a lot of issues, and if you look at sort of union questionnaires and that, you'd find a hell of a lot of women reported incidents off the back of Me Too. I think, as Dragan has said, then when people realized that they weren't alone in that situation, more voices came forward. I know there's sort of one or two famous cases, but I'm not actually sure. I'm not up on them, and I don't know if they were accused and found guilty of this, that, or the other. So I don't. Yeah, I'm not really sure exactly where the particular UK cases are, but it was definitely a positive thing. Like, as I said, when you're a young woman on a film set, I know nobody said anything on some of the sets that I've been in, and even if everybody saw inappropriate behavior or knew that people were uncomfortable with things that had been said, I would say the worst bullying that I ever experienced on a set was from a woman. Like, it's not necessarily only a man-woman issue with Me Too and Time's Up and movements like this. It really boils down to power and abuse of power, and somebody being in this privileged, powerful position and using it to get one over on people who they know are keen to do well in their job, or might they fear being blacklisted if they report something. And generally, if we can get people to stop taking advantage of other people on set, that would be great. So I think more widely, people can talk about bullying a little bit more openly. The other thing I always found difficult on set or sort of in these bigger productions beyond documentary, was if there's representation on your behalf in your department. You know, if you're in the lighting department, your gaffer will look out for you in terms of your rate and your hours and et cetera, et cetera. And on these bigger projects that I've worked in, the production department is often where there's a lot of women. You know, I don't know if that's, it just seems to sort of naturally happen. You know, you have costume and wardrobe, and production seems to be predominantly a lot of women. And it was always strange to me that there's nobody really to represent you. You know, I'm not saying anybody had a problem with a producer on a thing that I was working on, but say you did, your head of your department is the person that you would report it to. And this sort of lack of HR, and not HR to support the company and find ways out of contracts and this, that, and the other, but HR to really help the workers and to represent their best interests and make sure everything's transparent and fair and understood, is something that, you know, I don't think any other industry would get away with just it being completely non-existent. We seem to, I don't know, we don't have it. And I hope that there'll come some way, and intimacy coordinators is maybe one aspect of it, but to have somebody who's there to actually look out for welfare and for people to know that they can report something and have those discussions in a film environment would be really valuable, I think.
I think this is really a very important aspect that we didn't tackle. It's like really how it's not only transparency in terms of how much who gets, but it's really feeling secure at the workspace, that you can actually say to somebody that you are feeling something is happening. Yeah, I think we are kind of, this would be really good maybe to close it, but before that, I would really want to ask you one thing. You just mentioned it, and I think this is really not often discussed, but I feel that bullying in the film industry in the female position comes mostly from women.
So yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah, in the film industry, there was something I wanted to say earlier with the Metoo, but I wasn't sure if it came up. I don't know what, maybe we've talked a little bit about competition. Maybe there's this competitive aspect between women. Groups of women sometimes can have this atmosphere. I haven't really found it myself, I mean, other than this one particular woman. But a really weird phenomenon that I find at home is women who are a bit older, you know, maybe 50s, 60s, somehow through the press or the media that they're being fed or they consume, really don't like other women. Like they don't like other women. And we have this, you know, issue with Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew and everything that Prince Andrew has supposedly done and maybe settled some money for. And you speak to women who are in their 60s and they are much more concerned about putting down Meghan Markle than they are about Prince Andrew. And it's just it's the weirdest thing. I don't know where this sort of women hating thing comes from for some people. And I find it very problematic. You know, I think we can all support each other and raise each other up. And this women on women bullying is, yeah, I don't really know where it comes from, but it's a phenomenon, right?
Yeah, then I would say that's even like somehow we are probably raised up that you will be bullied by men, but it's very hurtful when you get bullied by women, because you kind of expect there's going to be solidarity in the jobs where are less women in general. So I think that really thank you, Charlotte, for pointing this out, because this is the aspect that kind of very rarely we discuss about. So I just wanted to ask you, others of you had this kind of experience in your career so far, and how did you cope with it? Dragana, did you had any experience like this?
Me personally, not, but that's the case. I mean, not only in the film industry, but I can say from the point of working in the cultural field, like everywhere, in theater, in festival, in performing arts, wherever. I mean, that's it's like that. I saw it and I couldn't believe it. But me personally, I didn't have that. I don't know. I mean, it's from the experience of what I saw. It's coming from the top positions, from the women who are very well positioned, basically, and who are more into working with men. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, why? And like, we need more men here, it's there is a lot of women working here, and I'm always like, how come you can even think something like that or say something like that? What does it mean? I mean, I don't understand that point of view, basically. But yeah, I saw it, and then I saw bullying, like from powerful women to some who are like working for them, let's say. And I don't understand from where this is coming from. Sometimes I'm thinking maybe because this one is much, it's really stupid, but sometimes it's like this is the other woman is more good looking, let's say, and this one is like, okay. So I mean, maybe it's stupid what I'm saying, but that's what I saw.
No, I totally understand the vibe that you're talking about, and more widely, I never understood producers who make it difficult for people on the first rung of the ladder because they had a hard time coming up as well. This, I had to suffer, so you should suffer, and this is how it should be, rather than everybody raising each other up and supporting each other. I think maybe for women in that position, maybe it was a hard slog for them to get there, and they feel like they'll be knocked off the perch by the newer, younger, more beautiful women who came along. And of course, it's not like that. It should be they're a mentor, they're a role model, they're somebody that can support the young person coming up, and everybody works together. But you start to get into sort of personal vulnerabilities and blind spots and all these kind of things.
So it's like a parent role, let's say. So you have different kinds of parents and parenting.
Yeah. So I think we are getting close to the end of the session. I really want to thank you all for participating. I think we had a very nice conversation. We tackled some of the questions that are persistent and keep popping up. What I wanted also to say is to thank IDF and Ji.hlava for putting up this panel, and Institute of Documentary Film is having its big EastDoc platform, one of the biggest networking events for the documentary filmmakers in Central and Eastern Europe, that is starting on 25th of March. So I hope that you will be able to join them in Prague in person. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.